Welcome, Fitness Business Podcast listeners. This is the Thinking Ahead Show with your host, Jason Stowell. Today we have Lindsey Leemis with us. Lindsey is a CRM and technology consultant for the fitness industry. Her focus is around membership sales, marketing, and the member experience. For those who may not be aware of CRM stands for, it's Customer Relationship Management. A CRM system allows you to manage all your members and prospective members' interactions in one streamlined process. Lindsey, thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Jason, for having me.
So can you take a moment and just tell us a little about yourself, your journey, why customer member relationships matter to you and should matter to our owners and operators right now?
Yeah, totally. So my background is more technical. And so I worked for a number of larger ad agencies and found that I loved working with specific clients in fitness because my passion outside of work was really related to just health and wellness and making sure that people are well taken care of and investing in people's well-being. And part of that is exercise. And so I took kind of my technical background with web design, development, data integration, and database management and moved that into working with health clubs. And so I was able to work with some of the higher end health clubs over the years and have loved being a part of more of the technical people that are within the industry.
So Lindsey, can you give us an example of how the pandemic has exposed where there may be opportunity for us in our industry?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So the pandemic has just created this just dramatic acceleration, and it's changed our members' behavior as well as the mediums that they're consuming digital content on. And it showed us that there's some areas where we could have really invested more into that digital customer experience. One specific example from the pandemic is the VOD and live streaming platform. VOD is the video on demand. And, with the rise of Peloton and Obey and Glow and all these great streaming platforms, as an industry, we could have been a little more aware that people are on the go and they're maybe busy moms and they want that in-club experience, but they also want to be able to connect with their community and great workout content that we provide at our clubs. And so we could have kept better pace with that. What are the other things other than a live streaming platform or video on demand that our members are really wanting during this period? And, are we rising to meet those digital customer expectations and staying relevant in all areas?
Do you have any advice for those of us who are really, we had to innovate rapidly through disruption? Is there anything that you see that if we're not doing it now, you need to start doing it immediately to kind of engage with our customers outside of our clubs?
Yeah, I think it's figuring out what are your customers' top 3 or 4 pain points right now. And maybe it's the mom at home with all her kids there. And can you provide great family fitness content that you're not providing right now? Or can you provide some virtual programming? Or what are their pain points? And then how are you addressing that to meet your member where they're at?
In your mind, what does an elite digital strategy look like for a health club operator right now who's killing it right now in the industry?
So I think it really starts with a really solid technology base. And there's kind of 2 levels I see in the industry as far as a technology stack. And the first is having that solid core, which kind of consists of 5 parts in my mind. The first is your website, which there's 3 pieces to that. Lead generation, so like forms and Facebook Messenger and all those things that are kind of coming in from different sources, informational content, and then your online membership sales. The second piece of that is your club management software, which hopefully everyone has. And then your third is Google My Business, which helps you show up on the search engine results page, or they call it SERPs. And so that'll show you in your local market, when people search for gyms in your area, you'll show up first on kind of in the right sidebar on Google. And then the fourth is your membership sales tracking. as well as your marketing softwares. And people typically tend to lean towards CRM because it's kind of an all-in-one solution. But sometimes people will piece together different things for tracking sales and pipeline, and then, different email tools and that sort of thing. And then your fifth piece is your health club data, which just making sure that's stored securely and it's very organized. Data is one of your most underutilized, and it's such a huge asset to keep your database clean and healthy. So moving on from that first level tech stack kind of level, you're like, I've nailed this. The second piece is a reactive and proactive piece. So the reactive is like a support ticketing system. And then the proactive piece is customer success and retention team, and forming technology around those two pieces.
Can you tell me a little bit more about, I love, that's so intriguing, a customer success and retention team. So what is that? Everyone has membership sales consultants, right? And we all have retention models, but tell me a little bit more about the strategy behind this team.
Yeah, so an interesting study done, it was done a while ago by Bain & Company, and they found that 80% of companies believe that they deliver quote unquote superior service to their customers. And then they sent out surveys to that same group of, the customers from those companies, and they found that only 8% of the customers from those companies believed that they were receiving superior level support from those companies. And so Bain & Company found this statistic to be totally shocking, and they deemed this term called the delivery gap. And the reasons they came up with for this gap was there is a lack of adjustment to the customer's changing expectations. So just a lack of innovation and kind of keeping step with that customer or that member. And then the other reasons were aggressive growth strategies and also actions that erode trust. So maybe I can give two examples from our industry. The first would maybe be really heavy focus on member acquisition versus a balance between retention and acquisition. And then on the kind of eroding trust, maybe a kind of haphazard rate change or charging some yearly fee without enough notice and communication with the member. So really there's that delivery gap, right? And I see most health clubs, some of them have ticketing systems, but I rarely see ones that have a customer success team. And so really they're focusing on attrition and building that connection and figuring out what the member goal is. And then it's going to be all different between every single person, but helping that person, if theirs is to check in 3 times a week and work out for 30 minutes, great. Like, can we figure out how to track that and make sure that they're reaching their goal? Or maybe it's to lose a little weight or just stay active so they can, hang out with their grandkids. And so what's the goal for that member? How are we tracking that? How are we tracking all of our interactions in a single location and building that relationship with our members?
That was a mind-blowing statistic. I'm shocked that the gap in what we believe versus what they believe, members believe, is fantastic. So can you tell us, outside of the fitness industry, is there anybody out there, bar none, that's just modeling like elite practices around member management or customer relations or any of that stuff?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I think the ones that always come to mind are like the Amazon, Apple, and Target. And, I could talk about those. I feel like everyone's talked about those. Focusing on the ones that really, they're all putting the customer at the very center of everything before they're choosing any technology or really doing any process change. They're always thinking about that customer at the center. And some of the smaller ones that maybe we haven't heard as much about are Ally Bank and Chick-Fil-A. And for me, Chick-fil-A is really constantly innovating. And I always see them. They even call their customers guests, which I'm like, that's so cool. It just it creates a focus for the team around a spirit of just service and hospitality and constantly putting that customer or guest at the center. And they're constantly reimagining their business through that connected guest's eyes. And an example, So this is just my one Chick-fil-A in town, but I've seen them constantly innovating over time. So probably about 4 years ago, they just had the single lane drive-through, like most fast food type restaurants. And then it started getting backed up and people were, waiting 20, 25 minutes, like still worth it. Like I would still go to Chick-fil-A for, even if I had to wait 20, 25 minutes. But they proactively thought about and responded to that guest experience. Like, this is too long for these people to wait. What can we do? And so sometimes little tiny changes don't have to even be some expensive thing. So that they sent out, all of their team members with iPads that were kind of connected to their waist, and they took orders in line, still that single line, but they deployed their team to make that experience a little bit better. And the line moved a little faster, which was great. So then probably about maybe 3 years ago, so a year later, they redid their whole drive-through and they added a second lane, and that significantly sped up the process. So they didn't have the people outside with iPads taking orders, but the 2 lanes definitely sped it up. And then more recently with COVID, they've deployed online ordering in their app. So they've digitized the process, over time, and now they have a separate line for the drive-through app. Right? So everyone that's ordering through the app goes through this other line. They don't even go through the drive-through, and they come out and bring the food to the car. And if they hadn't been constantly improving their guest experience over time, they would have been significantly behind. And when we're not quite in sync or in step with our customer demands, we start to fall behind, and it really challenges us to constantly be innovating, even if it's small things over time, to make sure that we're closely in step with our members or our guests or customers.
That's again another really fascinating thing, because you're right. I drive by Chick-fil-A, I eat there occasionally. But you're right. They're one of 15 fast food restaurants, but I see 2 lanes. I see iPads. I see and they're always McDonald's may have 1 or 2 cars, but they always have 20 cars because of the experience. I like you said, they start with the guest, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. So what lesson can all of us club owners, operators really take from Chick-fil-A? Is it really making sure that you start with them, reframing them from prospective member or member to a guest that we treat like you treat a guest in your house? Like, what is the lesson there for us?
Yeah, I think that service model, putting that, higher on the priority lists, and maybe moving more from acquisition to investing in that retention piece. I mean, I think specifically for Chick-fil-A and these other brands that are really innovating, I think there's maybe a couple things. So the first is they're constantly improving the customer experience. They're reiterating, they're investing in, it can be process transformation or digital or anything to stay up to date. And nothing's done haphazardly. Like, they're always thinking and are very thoughtful about their processes. And secondly, they're always looking to solve or address a pain point. So what right now are our members' pain points? Even pause this and think about, like, what are your top 3 member pain points, and like, how can you specifically address those right now? And that might not be something that's a comfortable thing to do, like it might be investing in technology or investing in different things, but like, how can you connect better with your member right now? And then third, I think they're really proactively building and investing in that long-term relationship with their customers or their guests.
So how does CRM, or a robust CRM plan, make that more successful for us? Like I said, we all have ideas around how we're going to build member relationships, but is there a way to professionalize that so that we can get predictable results, as opposed to, why did Jenny leave? Well, we don't really know. So how does CRM help?
Yeah, so CRM consolidates your record. So a record in a system is one single person. And for most CRMs, there's you're going to have a record, and that person's going to remain that single record, but change status. Their relationship's going to go through kind of a cycle, right? So they might come onto your website and start kind of looking around and fill out different forms, and that's going to be documented within the CRM, and they're going to become a prospect at some point in that system. And then they're going to move, their customer journey is going to move through to be a member. And then, maybe you're tracking all these different pieces, and it's consolidating it into one location. And, eventually maybe you'll send out a net promoter score survey, and you'll get that back, and you'll see their NPS change over time. And tracking those type of data points on such an individual level versus an aggregate is so important, especially for NPS specifically. Seeing, if I'm a 9 or a 10 and I drop to consistently several times, and you send me a survey and I drop to 5, something went wrong there, and that needs to be addressed. So there's a lot of things that CRM automates for you, and there's finding that fine balance between lots of automation and not. And it's a balance, but you also want a team that's, a human reaching out and building relationships as well as the automation. But CRM just really consolidates your efforts and all of those touch points into one location. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever called a company and you've had a problem, and you explain the problem, and they're like, okay, maybe you get disconnected, or, it's an ongoing issue, and you call back later, you're like, what's your problem? And and you're reiterating the same thing. CRM eliminates that, because you have all of those notes and all of, every single interaction with that company in one spot.
That's great. So for those listeners who may not be familiar with Net Promoter Score, can you kind of give us a 30-second dive in what that is and why that matters to a club owner or operator?
Sure. Yeah. So Net Promoter Score is a score that really measures, there's detractors, more passive, and then more of a promoter. And your score is the promoters minus the detractors. And a lot of people aggregate this data. And so, our score is, whatever, and they're not looking at NPS on an individual level. It's just really a score of, kind of how you're doing on all different levels. Some of the NPS are more general, the surveys that people send out. Some are more specific and granular, 1 to 10, what are your fitness, how are you doing with your fitness results? How is the front desk experience? How is the cleanliness? So it's asking you all these questions, and it's aggregating the data for your members into kind of a centralized report typically. But not a lot of people track NPS on more of an individual level on that individual record. And it's so very important.
That's excellent. So will that, in your mind, so when you have those detractors, this will help to identify those individuals so that we can meet them where they are, help them, as opposed to just let them, slowly move on and out, or even worse, Google, leave a comment on Yelp about us. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely addressing, so the detractor score is 0 to 6. And some of those can be saved, some can't. Some of it's more just even a change in score. So they're a 9, which is considered a promoter, and then they drop to a 7, which is more passive, and then they drop to a 5. That's that should be flagged, automatically flagged for the team to follow up with, because they were having a really great experience. Then we kind of lost them, and why is that happening? Are they not meeting their goals? Are they not connecting? There's so many things, but all this is done more of on an individual level. But that really, NPS just helps give us a gauge on where we're at.
Excellent. So Lindsey, let me ask you then, where do you see this shift focusing when it comes to customer or membership relationships moving forward?
Yeah, so I think there's a massive shift, mostly in the last year, that there's this end that's happening to really abruptive marketing and sales, and much more of a focus around relationship building. And there's these two terms, the relationship building, that's kind of more my thing, but it's called inbound, and the other is called outbound. And outbound is anything that's just interruptive to the user. So something that is stopping our flow of activity to try to gain attention. And that can be anything such as pop-ups or banner ads, or paying for like a local email list, or paying for any list in general. And inbound is more of that relational marketing that's really earning attention and building trust just in a very organic way, and providing content that's of value, and holding a very clean database and an opted in email campaigns. And I think we're going to continue to see just a more authentic and genuine connection as we move forward with marketing and clubs, and just everything in general is going to move more that way.
Excellent. So let me ask you, I always like to give listeners an actionable tip so that as soon as they're done watching or listening to the show, they can implement something immediately. And so you had mentioned something about the execution plan earlier in one of our conversations. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is, and maybe what our listeners can do with that immediately after to create more success in their own clubs?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to just take inventory where you're at, kind of give ourselves a digital health, kind of checklist. Where are we, are we investing in growing digital and technology at our clubs, or are we kind of barely keeping up with member expectations, or are we falling a little behind? And I ask this question to a lot of club operators, and I think it's thought-provoking. So what percentage of your marketing and technology and membership budget goes towards the acquisition of new members, and what percentage goes towards support and customer success to retain club members? And however we answer that, it just really tells us a lot about where our club is investing their resources and their time, and do we need to move from a little more reactive to proactive, or do we have a good balance? And I think that taking inventory helps us know where we're at and where we can focus our efforts going forward.
I love that, because like you said, we can all say we have a customer retention plan, but where are the dollars at? Because the dollars are really going to be where the rubber meets the road. That's such an awesome and probably challenging question, I'd imagine, for a lot of us to look at. So Lindsey, let me ask you, if listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can reach out to you and ask any additional questions they may have?
Yeah, so probably the easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn, Lindsey Leemis, Leemis, and just send me a DM, or they can email me. My email is Lindsey, Lindsey, @twist.software. And feel free to follow our business page, Twist CRM Integrations. We just post lots of valuable content for clubs to just help them with member retention and acquisition and working with CRM.
That's excellent. Lindsey, thank you so very much. This has been amazing and informative, and I'm so excited to share it with the FBP family. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jason.